How do you handle stress and disappointment? How do you handle it when this ain't that? You literally thought that it was one thing, but it turns out it's completely something else. I think that it's a true testament to one's character to be able to dust it off and keep rolling, or dust it off and try again, as the late great Aaliyah said. When we're disappointed, when we're hurt, or when we feel like we knew exactly what was going on and it turns out that the rug was just pulled right from under us, like Aladdin's carpet or something. I wonder, what are the next steps in the journey? I know the next steps in the journey. When you have that disappointment, you have to keep going. You have to recognize that this is just a moment in time and that things will look up and it'll change for the better. And if you are suddenly brought to the awareness that what you thought is really ain't, then that's even better, because good for you. Now you know. And knowledge is definitely half the battle. The Bible actually says that God's people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. So imagine with the knowledge, you are created anew, you are refreshed, you are reborn, rebirthed. But all of those things that we say, it doesn't stop the disappointment or the shock of it. Like, oh, it's what I call a tower moment. Like, whoops, the tower is crumbling down. In some versions of that story, the people knew that the tower was on fire. They just chose to ignore it. And in other versions of the story, it was a complete shock. So I'm talking about the complete shock, not the ignoring it to think that it may never happen, but just the whoops, we're in trouble. Again, it's a true testament to one's character if you can go through that or have that experience and still maintain your dignity, meaning not cry and beg and plead for it, and keep moving forward. Like completely not looking back, like saying, okay, well, this ain't that, this is what happened, I'm gonna dust it off and we're gonna keep going in this direction. Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast Lead in Love, where my prayer for you is truly that you lead the type of life that you want to live and love yourself in the process. Today we're talking about disappointment and when that rug is pulled from underneath you. Woo! Listen, hard times aplenty, but that's okay, because remember one thing, God always got you. Even when you feel like you don't have yourself, don't worry about it. He's carrying you. And if you don't believe me, go back and read the poem Footprints in the Sand. Okay? All right. Anyway, on with the program. One thing I know for certain is that whenever we go through trials and tribulations, it's not for us. It's for the other person. It's for the people that we're going to teach. It's a story that we'll have in our emotional arsenal. So if somebody else goes through this thing, or to avoid other people going through this thing, we talk about it. We tell our truth. We're not victimized by it. We're liberated from it. And so I guess that's hard in the moment, though, because when you're going through it in the moment, when you feel like it was one way, but it really turns out it was something else, there is no one to talk to. There is no one to tell, because you're going through it. You got to get through it. It's basically like the lights are off and you're trying to feel your way through a room. There's no one there but you, and that's how it is, right? There's no one there but you anyway. You got to get through it on your own, even if you have a support system, even if you have a partner. Life is designed for one person to get through their path and their trials and tribulations, all while connecting with others. You connect with others to grow and teach and gain support, etc., but nobody can walk your path but you. This life is chess, not checkers. You have to navigate your own squares to get to the goal, or to get to that checkmate. So while you're going through the process, and that's truly what it is when you're surprised like that, When you're going through the process and the trials and tribulations, and it doesn't even have to be a big thing. It could just be a shock, like you had no idea. And I'm not talking about a birthday shock. I'm talking about a shock like, uh-oh, or oops, what? Those kind of shocks. Those kinds of surprises or tower moments when it feels like the foundation is crumbling down. The thing about it, though, is that if you're having one of those kind of moments, the foundation wasn't steady anyway. Remember, I called this a Aladdin moment, like where he took where the rug could snatch from underneath you. It's not steady anyway. And that's the thing about the universe, the world, other people. They have a mind of their own. They're going to do what they want to do. The only thing that we can depend on in life is uncertainty. And since we know that for certain, that we can only depend on uncertainty, then we have to have a disconnection from outcomes. And we have to look at what we have right then and there and say, okay, how can I use what I have right here, right now to salvage this moment? And once you figure that out, or you point it out like, oh, okay, I have A, B, not C, D, and E. That's cool. Immediately remove those from your thought, because if you keep thinking about that C, D, and E that you don't have, then that's kind of looking backwards. It's already been spilt. It's gone. It's over. You need to look towards the A and B that you still have and focus on that. And then immediately you'll regain your strength. If you don't feel better after you focus on what you do have and take inventory in that, then you got to meditate. You got to pray so you can get your mind right. It only takes a couple of seconds. Just put both hands on your heart, take a few deep breaths, and talk. If you talk to God, talk to God. If you talk to yourself, talk to yourself. If you talk to the universe, then the universe. Whoever it is that you talk to when you're alone, in the dark, in that quiet, that's who you need to go back to right now. That's who you need to confide in during this time. Talking to your mom isn't going to help. Talking to your sister isn't going to help. Your husband, your wife, it's not going to help. Because this is about you. This is your universe. This is your moment. How do you deal with it? Once you figure out you, then the rest of the world will calm down. But if you can't get yourself together, then everything else is just going to be bouncing around up and down, acting crazy. You don't need the crazy. You need the quiet. Aren't you glad that you had this moment? Like, for real, aren't you at peace now that you know? Now that you know, you can move forward. You see, it's not necessarily that you were fooled once or that you were tricked. It's just that you didn't know. Now that you have the knowledge, now that you can move forward in a productive and healthy manner, isn't this a good thing that this rug has been pulled up from out of you? Maybe you wouldn't have paid attention otherwise. Maybe small, mundane, and minute things would have gotten in the way. Maybe, you just wouldn't have paid attention to the warning. You wouldn't have heard the call. But because this happened, now you're aware. And now that you're aware, you can do something about it. You can help it. You can fix it. You can trust it. You can try it. You can, whatever you need to do. Again, the trick to overcoming those surprise moments, those this ain't that moments, is to look at what you still have. Not what you thought you have that you don't have. Look at what you still have. Immediately push to the side those things that you no longer have, those whoops moments, those Aladdin carpet pulled from under you moments, those tower moments. Forget about that. Push that to the side, and in time it'll disappear, because as you walk forward, it's just like when you're walking. Like if you're meeting with a friend and y'all decide to part ways, as you're walking and you turn back and look at them, they get further and further away. Keep walking, turn back further and further away until what? They disappear. That's what I'm telling you to do today. Keep moving forward. Keep walking past that tower moment. Look at what you already have and use that Even if you felt like you had 5 things again and the tower moment knocked down 3, you still have 2. Trust me, that was the 2 that was meant to stay. Anything else that you don't have, you wasn't meant to have it anyway. There was no other outcome. This is how it was supposed to go. And having said that, always remember your strength. Always remember that strength comes from truth. Truth comes from knowledge. Knowledge comes from wisdom. Wisdom becomes you. All right, guys. Thanks for checking out the broadcast. Make sure you check out my other YouTube channels. Their links will be in the description. Most importantly, focus on yourself. Lead the type of life you want to live. Love yourself in the process. And make sure that when those tower moments come, those oops moments come, you focus on yourself, you focus on what you have, and you keep moving forward. You're nobody's victim.